So, hello Mr. Ferry, my name is Clemens, and now I am going to explain to you the summary of the history lesson from session 1 to session 4. Okay, so long before European nations pioneered the era of oceans exploration, which was then followed by the era of colonialism's imperialism, trade activities between nations in the world were running. These trading activities connect the nations of East and Southeast Asia, the Mediterranean region, the Mediterranean Sea, and Europe by passing the Silk Road. The term Silk Road was used because originally the main commonly trade was silk from China. The Silk Road was pioneered in China around 139 BC when China unified under the Han Dynasty. Some experts argue that the trade traffic dates back 100 years before that. This route is known as the trade route with the longest time frame and the longest distance in history, which is for about 1,500 years with a length of 6,400 kilometers. European colonialisms and imperialisms in Asia certainly did not come suddenly. In the beginning, European colonialisms and imperialisms were not motivated by ambitions to dominate and colonize nations in Asia and Africa. The main purpose of the arrival of Europeans was trade. They bought rare items on the European market, especially spice, and occasionally sold their products such as clothing to Asia and Africans. In short, his main motivation is trading. And now I'm going to explain about the Portuguese explorer. So the first one is about the Atlantic exploration. In 1415, the city of Ceuta was occupied by the Portuguese in an effort to control navigations of the African coast. Henry the Navigator, aware of profit possibilities in the Saharan trade routes, invest in sponsoring voyages that within 2 decades of explorations allow Portuguese islands to bypass the Sahara. The second one is the sea road to Asia. The Portuguese goal of finding a sea road to Asia was finally achieved in a groundbreaking voyage commanded by Vasco da Gama, who reached Calicut in western India in 1498, becoming the first European to reach India. The second voyage to India was dispatched in 1500 to Pedro Alvarez Cabral. And the third one is the Indian Ocean. The Portugal's purpose in the Indian Ocean was to ensure the monopoly of the spice trade, taking advantage of the rivalries that pit Hindus against Muslims. The Portuguese established several forts and trading posts between 1500 and 1510. A number of factors that led to the exploration of the oceans by European nations were the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire in 1453, the development of shipping technology pioneered by the Portuguese under King Henry the Navigator, the development of mercantilism in Europe, the desire to gain wealth, which means gold, spread Christianity, gospel, and achieve, which means glory. In the 15th until the 18th centuries were the era of European explorations. European nations, spread by Portugal and Spain, explored new worlds both in East Asia and in the West America. The main goal of the Europeans to explore the oceans was to find the spice producing countries. Spices were available commodity at that time. In 1494, under the Treaty of Tordesillas, Pope Alexander VI divided the earth into two based on meridians. The earth east of the meridians is the home range of Portugal. The western part of the meridians is the home range of Spain. The Portuguese first entered Indonesia in 1512 under the leadership of the Afonso de Albuquerque expeditions after previously conquering Malacca in 1511. The Portuguese then entered into a trade agreement with the Kingdom of Sunda, Pajajaran. In 1522, the cooperation agreement took the form of Padrao. Based on the agreement, the Portuguese could build a fort and warehouse in Sunda Kalapa. In 1526, the Kingdom of Sunda was conquered by the Sultanate of Demak, which was worried about Portuguese expansion. In 1527, the Portuguese return to Sunda Kalapa was a follow-up to a trade agreement with the Sunda Kingdom, but was successfully driven out by the Demak force under the leadership of Fatahillah. After being expelled from Sunda Kalapa in 1527, more Portuguese expeditions were sent to the Maluku Islands. There, the Portuguese cooperated with the Sultanate of Ternate for the monopoly of the spice trade. However, these cooperations ended in 1575 when the Sultan of Ternate, Babullah, expelled the Portuguese. After that, the Portuguese withdrew to Timor, Solor, and Flores, and then occupied the territory. The Spanish entered the archipelago via the Philippines. They arrived in the Maluku Islands in 1521 under the leadership of Sebastian del Cano. In Maluku, the Spaniards cooperated with the Tidore Sultanate. The Sultanate of Tidore allied itself with Spain in order to balance its competitors, the Sultanate of Ternate, which had previously allied itself with the Portuguese. In Maluku, Spain clashed with Portugal. Both felt that the Maluku Islands were part of their colonies. The solutions in 1529 was agreed upon. Finally, Spain left Maluku. Portugal remained in the power there. Spain also withdrew to the Philippines. In 1595, the first Dutch expedition to the archipelago under the leadership of Cornelius de Houtman successfully landed in Banten. After that, the Dutch sent their second expeditions under the leadership of Jesse van Eyck in 1598 until 1600. The expeditions made it to Banten and the Maluku Islands. In the early 1600s, the Portuguese succeeded from the Maluku Islands. Since then, the Dutch monopolized the spice trade there. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the VOC. Colonialisms, imperialisms, competitions between Dutch traders and other foreign traders, such as Portugal's and England's in the spice trades, was of course very unfavorable to the Netherlands. These competitions has resulted in a decline in profits for Dutch shipping companies. to overcome unhealthy competitions. Dutch forming a forum which is an association of commercially companies that are spread across 6 Dutch cities. On March 20, 1602, the union was officially formed under the name of Vereniging Oost-Indische Campagne, or we can call it as VOC. The objective of the VOC are avoiding unfair competitions among Dutch traders, strengthen the positions of the Netherlands in facing competitions from other European traders unions such as the East India Company from England, monopolize the spice trades in the archipelago, and assist the Dutch government which is struggling against the Spanish occupations. And now I'm going to explain about Peter Both and Jan Pieterszoon Koen. So first, about Peter Both. So Peter Both was appointed by the first Government General of the VOC in November 1610 until 1614. His main task was to create a trade monopoly on the islands of the Dutch East Indies. And also, he then built the VOC headquarters in Ambon. And he also succeeded in entering into a trade agreement with Maluku, conquering the islands of Timor and expelling Spain from Tidore. And the second one is Jan Pieterszoon Koen. So in 1619, the VOC official Heren Zeventien appointed Jan Pieterszoon Koen as Governor General. His term of office ended in 1626. And the next one I'm going to tell you about why does the VOC collapse. So the first factors is the internal factors. So the first one is no transparency in the financial administrations, which eventually lead to corrupt practice by VOC employees themselves. Second one is the VOC was deeply in debt. And the third one is VOC expenditures were getting bigger due to the war. And the fourth one is there is stiff competitions from European traders. And the last one is the existence of continuous war by the VOC, so that it costs a lot, especially when the war against Diponegoro. And the external factors is because this political change also influenced Dutch policy towards the VOC. The government of the Batav Republic saw that what the VOC was doing was against the spirit of equality and freedom. Therefore, the VOC had to dissolve. In this happened in 1799. The Netherlands remained parts of France until 1813, and France withdrew all its troops from the Netherlands due to the loss of the war at the Battle of Leipzig in October 1813. And now I'm going to talk about the Dutch impact. So, the Portuguese and the Dutch colonizations left an influence on the Indonesian shelf until now. The strongest influence appears in the socio-cultural field. The Portuguese colonialisms introduced the religions of Catholicism, keroncong music, fado, and enriched the Indonesian vocabulary. Apart from the socio-cultural field, the Dutch influence that has made an impression on the life of Indonesian society today is evident in the fields of economy. politics, law, and technology. In the socio-cultural field, the influence of Dutch colonialism can be seen in the fields of education, language, lifestyles, and Protestantism. In the economic field, the strong influence of Dutch colonialism was in the form of recognitions of land rent, export crops, the money economy, the wage systems, and the contract labor systems. All of this is a direct impact of the introductions of liberal economic system in the form of implementing an open door policy. In the political sphere, the Dutch influence is evident in the bureaucratic model of government. Meanwhile, in the field of law, Dutch law greatly influenced the Indonesian legal system. The article in the Indonesian Criminal Code (KUH Pidana) and the Indonesian Civil Code (KUH Perdata), for example, still have a strong colonial character. Furthermore, in the field of science and technology, the Netherlands introduced the liberalisms, which also affects Indonesia's political and economic systems until now. Meanwhile, the Dutch colonialisms also made the Indonesian people familiar with machine-based technology, modern weapons, and communications and information technology. Okay, so that's all for the summary for the history 1 until 4 period lessons. Thank you, Sir Ferry, for listening to my summary. Thank you.